Hello, Chris.
Hey, man.
How's it going?
Really good.
Really good to meet you in person, because we spoke once on the phone on Saturday.
Yeah.
And now you're here, which is amazing, to be honest with you. Welcome to Tasty Humans. I'm really excited for this particular recording, given the subject matter. But for everybody that's going to watch and listen, who are you and what do you do?
Well, I'm really pleased to be here. So thanks for having me. I'm Chris Harrison. I call myself the Healthier Life Coach. I'm a coach and I'm on the mission to help people rediscover their joy.
And where did this start for you then?
I mean, really, it started with me 12 years ago when I went into the 12-step recovery kind of process and stopped with alcohol, went through a really nasty divorce, had real massive life change and life makeover 12 years ago. So I started a lot of work on myself, and I looked back and decided it was time to make some change, and went into that process, changed a lot in life, went through a really nasty divorce, went through lots of money issues, and really started to rebuild my life. And from that I've become really passionate about living life to its absolute most, really, and trying not to be down and depressed and like I was, pull myself out of all of that kind of horrible area of life you can get into when things start to go wrong, really.
I wanted to ask you a question about addiction, which is, when did you realize that it had gone from being something that, because alcohol is legal, you know, and I've always thought that alcohol addiction is almost like gambling, where, because it's legal, it must be a lot, I believe, harder to deal with than maybe addictions to drugs and stuff like that might be, you know, because they're illegal due to the nature of accessibility. But I wanted to ask, when did you realize that it had gone from being recreational fun to something that was now causing a big problem?
A long time before that. I think the journey and the process of actually getting to that point 12 years ago was probably another 10 years in the making, really, to be honest, and exhausting when I think about it now.
Yeah.
If I think about the internal conversations you have with yourself about what you're doing and not doing. So my daughter's 20. So I would say a massive point for me, where a point of reflection for me, was when she was born. Being the dad of a girl, I looked and decided I wasn't the kind of person that I wanted to be as that father figure. I was a mess and I was in messiness. But obviously you can add on all that time on top before I actually went into a room and actually started to do some work on that personally. So I think, yeah, probably at least like 10 years previous to that, I looked at myself and thought, this is not the way to live. Like, this isn't right here. But I think society and the way you live, and especially back then, it just wasn't the thing that you'd stop drinking. You know, alcohol was a difficult thing to stop.
That's what I'm saying.
You know, I worked in the creative industries. You know, I worked in different, like, really, like, fast-moving, cool brands. Like, I worked with Virgin for years. You know, there were always parties and things to go to. So there was always an opportunity to think, well, you know, I won't worry about that now. Let's just get through this phase and do this or whatever.
What constitutes an alcoholic? Because I always think that it's somebody drinking a bottle of vodka before they get in the shower every morning. Maybe that's a bit extreme, but you know what I mean. But I've also heard other statements that if you have to have one drink a day, or even, I mean, I don't know, I can't really go into it possibly in this format, but I've suffered certain levels of addiction on other things, you know. And my side of things was I always felt that I couldn't function without it. You know, I don't know if it would ever constitute heavy use, but I wanted to ask, going through the program, you know, what is like the official volume that you could be considered to be an alcoholic? So that's danced around that.
That's actually a really interesting question that nobody's ever asked me that question before. So you've sparked something of interest in me there. because going into the rooms and being part of the rooms, okay, so a big part of being an addict is that you will be judgmental about everything in life that you don't want to do. So you will resist all elements of it. I don't want to do that. I'm better than that, and you have this big ego that chases you around and talks to you. So going into the rooms and admitting defeat and sitting in rooms, you tend to sit in judgment for quite a long time and look at the people in the rooms. So back to your point, I would sit in rooms, and also I'd travel a lot. So I'd go to different parts of the world. So the first thing I'd do is find out where a meeting was. So I had that support network. So I've sat in rooms in different parts of the world, and I've sat in rooms with very different people. And, like sometimes I'd sit with kids who were like in their early 20s, and they'd be talking about why they're there and why they don't want to drink or be involved in. It could be drink, it could be drugs, it could be anything in an AA meeting. And I'd look at them and I'd think, you're like 23. Like, what is your problem? So, like you've got life to live. Like you're worrying too much, And actually, to answer your question, see, this is the point, back to my point around joy. I think what makes you have an issue with anything is if it's making you miserable.
Yes.
And it's making you unhappy and it's making you depressed, then that equals something that needs fixing.
How easy was it for you to admit that to yourself and then go and get help, which for everybody is the toughest first step?
Yeah.
Because we all think that we don't have a problem with anything. We're in control of everything. We're fine.
No, incredibly difficult. Yeah. I mean, the 10 years before I went in were different phases of me managing my addiction myself, or managing, my relationship with it, going for long periods of time where I would stop independently. And, I've done 6 months, so I'm good. No problem. I even been on the phone to AA in, dark corners of like London in miserable winter days, talking to somebody on the phone and, but then not following through or going and actually doing it. So that's something that I recognize. It's something that I deal with a lot with my clients, is like, it really pulls at my heartstrings on all sorts of levels. It doesn't have to be deep and heavy addiction issues, but that point of getting somebody to make a step and commit to doing something, that's a really hard thing for people to do. Really hard.
Well, they say that nobody will give up an addiction until they're ready to do it. I wanted to ask, just for context as well, and feel 100% free to say, no, I'm not going to answer that. What was your relationship with alcohol, and what type of, I'm just going to say it, what type of drunk were you? Like, if I get drunk, I'd usually sort of get a bit, animated, and then I'll fall over and pass out. Like, but what was your like messiest sides?
Just sad.
Yeah.
Yeah. just down and sad. It's one of those things that I just like. When I first started drinking, I was a like party boy. Yeah. I'd be the one sat up at 6 a.m. still when everybody else is like fading, and then going on to what the next thing is. So, I had lots of energy, and we were talking before about the old days of going to clubs and things like that. And I said how you gave me a rush of excitement talking about queuing to get into a club. Yeah. You brought that sensation back to me that I'd totally forgotten about. But I actually think a lot of that was forms of anxiety about going out, connecting with other people, being social, which were maybe kind of insecurities that I would use alcohol to drink fast and feel better and, numb that down a little bit. So then it became about numbing and anesthetizing and, then as you grow older and the party days stop and the going out stops so much, then you're the person at home who's drinking 1 or 2 bottles of wine while you're cooking a meal on a Tuesday night and a Monday night and a Wednesday and a Thursday. Yeah. and so it would get me down. I found it would be a depressant to me.
Well, look, as I've said once already, we first met, introduced by somebody that I actually hadn't met before over LinkedIn, and we spoke on Saturday for the first time on the phone. I'm really grateful for you being so open with me in this format. And you don't even know me. Do you know what I mean? So I'm super grateful of that. When you went into the program then and you started to get control of it. How did that feel?
It took some time, and it was a struggle. It wasn't liberating, and it was hard. It was hard work. I left as many meetings as I sat in. It was very stop and start. I was in a lot of denial for quite a long time. But I kept bringing myself to them. I kept turning up. I kept showing up, as we talk about it, and doing the work. And over time, I adjusted, and slowly started to feel the benefits of, my inner voice, my inner monologue kind of calming down a little bit, and and it kind of started to balance out. A big thing for me though was that I fortunately recognized in myself an ability to move and do physical things, and when that clicked, which took me, I did that really quickly. I started to replace those blank times that I would drink, so the void that I would have. I would go to a meeting reluctantly, but I'd be more willing to put some shoes on, running shoes on, and go for a run. And I would find that would make me feel like a million times better from doing that. So I tended to do that more and more and more. So that was the bit where the change started to happen for me. That was the bit where I really started to feel different and feel the change. Going into the rooms and going to the meetings was something that I made myself do. And the community aspect of that and sitting and sharing stories became really joyful. It became a really positive experience to sit and talk and share and listen to other people and realize you're not on your own. But really, I started to recognize that there was work that I could be doing myself that was outside of those rooms, that involved me being active and moving and being physical. And I actually believe that forms a huge basis of the most successful way that you can make change in your life is by creating points of action and movement.
What were you doing for a living? We were back then. You said you'd work with Virgin and stuff like this. What was your career?
Yeah, I was a designer, graphic designer.
Oh, right. Okay.
So creative and graphic designer. I started in the music industry.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it was a really great place to start.
Yeah.
It was all I wanted to do when I was at school, was be a record sleeve designer. So I worked really hard.
Oh, cool. I don't know this. Have you done any sleeves that we would all know?
I rattled out so many. Like that, I used to do a lot of dance sleeves. I used to work with all the independent dance labels in London. It was the late 90s. There was a lot going on there.
Yeah, 100%.
Worked with Groove Armada, did the branding and the sleeves for them. Earth, Wind and Fire, did loads of like projects and big projects, loads of pop stuff. Loads of really cheesy pop stuff.
Yeah.
There was big money in the business coming towards 2000.
Yeah.
The millennium. It was just at the end, and it was all about X Factor and pop, and we used to churn them all out.
Was it? When was the first? Was it Pop Stars? I think the first one was Pop Stars, where they.
I actually did the advertising for that.
Oh, there you go. Okay. That was like 2000, wasn't it?
It was Pop Idol.
So
there was Pop Idol. We did the advertising for that. And then agency, I'm still in touch with all the guys. We were quite a tight group of brothers who kind of hung out together, but we worked. So I moved from music and designing record sleeves, because that started to peter out a little bit, into the creative industry. And I worked with an agency called Point Blank, and we were working with MTV and Virgin Mobile, V Festival. So I kind of moved out of record sleeve design into TV, MTV graphics. MTV was a great place to work. And that was in the days of Russell Brand and Davina McCall. So we'd be in and out of meetings, and those guys would be running around having like all sorts of stuff going on.
And that was also that wonderful, wonderful moment in time, which you don't have now, where anyone could really say and do whatever they want.
100%.
I think I listened to something yesterday about Oasis, a little 5-minute thing, and they said that one of the most important guitar band shows of that era was TFI Fridays.
Yes.
And it all came flooding back, how phenomenal that television show was.
Yeah. It was all really raw, wasn't it? Loads of energy.
Loads, say what you want, do what you want, I wanted to ask, so to come back to your journey, as you're now dealing with recovering from being an alcoholic, you're still doing the same job. Were you still in the same world? You're still in the same job. So now you're kind of, because another thing I think a lot of people would like to hear or need to know when you're dealing with recovery and change is how you're still in the same world, but now you have to attack it in a different way. I mean, how did you deal with that?
Yeah, I guess it kind of tallied with growing up.
Yeah, okay,
in some respects. So as I moved nearer and nearer towards the need to be sober, children came along, and I kind of moved into the creative industry. So the jobs got a bit more grown up. I moved into PR. I was also working independently, so I was running my own design company with my own clients, hence the Virgin connections. But then when I went through my divorce and basically did a whole rebuild, I went into AA on the advice of a very close friend of mine who said, look, take some pressure out of your life, go and work for somebody else for a while, let somebody else pay the bills. I went back into London agency land and worked at a PR agency, huge, big PR agency. So that was a lot more kind of grown up. So I was able to hide in there and do a day job.
Did you have to tackle any like social engagements where you were saying, no,
I just wouldn't do them.
Okay.
There was about 2 years where I basically just opted out of anything just because it was just the easier way for me to deal with it. I think, I think I could have managed to go through them, though, I think that was more of a choice of my own, that it was easier to have no temptation than to have
I totally agree with you.
A little bit of temptation. It was just something that I decided was the better option, really, to do. I withdrew. Yeah, I definitely I withdrew and became an island, and did that aspect of it. But running alongside that at the same time, I talked about the physical aspect. I was living in a grotty little bedsit, and I was having my kids half the time, but I got involved in a fitness community where I was living. And there were other guys there who were maybe going through divorce and women going through the same issues, and people would be meeting and going out for runs, and so there was a community aspect that was very much a massive help, that I started to hang out with more. So I would opt out of the business London aspect of it and come back and retreat, put my shoes on and go out and run and do something over that side.
So you really subscribe to maybe the statement, show me your friends and I'll show you your future.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. I love that. I love that analogy of you are the 5 people you spend the most time with. I think if anybody actually stops right now and thinks, who are my 5 friends, there could be some pretty revealing moments. How long have you now been sober for then?
12 years.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah.
Because it's tough, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But so you've come through that, and now what's happened next? So you come out of that and you started on a journey towards now passing this on and helping other people rediscover their joy.
Yeah, I've so in the midst of going back and being a grown up and avoiding social interaction, I was very fortunate to meet my wife, who I'm married to now, Kath, who's beautiful, and we remarried. She had 2 kids, and we brought my 2 kids. We built our own family. So that's part way through my 12 years is when we met. So I started to rebuild. We make new connections, make a new life, and rebuild from there. And I carried on being an independent graphic designer, but my energy and love for doing that was just fizzling out. It seemed very difficult to generate the work. Every recession that hits, design gets hit first. I must have gone through at least 6 in my lifetime. And the roller coaster of like, am I busy, am I not busy, continued on. But I was in a good situation, happy, like life felt great. Up until a couple of years ago, where a contract ended and I was left with absolutely nothing to do. And that was the next part of my journey, which I call the identity crisis, which is where I realised that I didn't know what I was meant to be.
And you were how old?
So I was just coming up to 50.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's 2 years back. And I was totally unhappy. Like I felt down and low and depressed. I recognised that even though I knew what to do to make myself feel better, like my purpose was just lost. I didn't have consistent work. Didn't feel like I was contributing to the family in the right way. You know, we're fortunate in that my wife has a big job, a corporate job. You know, I could look after the family and deal with that side of it, but still that didn't seem like I was doing what I needed to do. So I took on board the fact that I'm a mentor and I work with people, and a point of reflection started to think about actually coaching people and helping people. And maybe this is something that is my life's calling, really. You know, I do it all the time. I do it in groups. I do it independently through the AA circuit. You know, I've done it with individuals that wanted help with fitness and how to get themselves sorted. And I just think you go through that massive imposter syndrome where you think, well, you know, I don't know what gives me the right to do that. I'm a designer and a creative. That's all I've ever done. And I'm not even any good at that anymore. And you sit and kind of think about all of that kind of stuff. And then I just have a really close friend who is a coach and did some coaching work with me. And I found that just totally enlightening. She's from the music industry days, and she totally like changed my perspective, like looked at life with me, and she was just like, you're born to do this, Chris. Like, you need to get out there and start helping people. This is what you're meant to do. And it really it was a jolt, and it made me see that I have potential to do that kind of thing. So I went into training, spent a lot of time looking at what I've done, what I wanted to do, started to build a mechanic and a program around what I believe people need, and what coaching is, and more importantly, driven by fitness.
What is coaching? Oh, let me reframe that. Forgive me. What is the training? How did you train to be a coach?
Training for me is very much rooted in 12-step.
Okay.
I was trained. Yeah. So when to be a coach, you don't have to be certified. Yeah.
Okay.
You can be certified. I'm a psychosynthesis coach as well. So I've done an independent study, which is based around psychology and a spiritual approach to psychology, because of my depth of knowledge from the recovery network and 12-step, which I wanted to bring out. I wanted to look at the psychology aspect because I was really interested in that anyway. So I've independently gone off and qualified in something called psychosynthesis coaching. But really, to become a coach, you just need the gumption and the kind of drive to decide that you feel you can help people, and that's it in its essence, really. But unfortunately, because of that, there are a lot of people out there who are selling themselves as coaches.
This was why I asked about the training, is because it's a bit of a buzzword, isn't it? Everyone's a coach, it's like, but you're coming from as spoken about, an incredibly genuine place with real world experience.
Yeah.
So, because I think when it comes to the coaching thing, it's like, you know, you're selling, take my advice.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I was just wondering if there are rules set in place where there are things you cannot say to somebody, or you should not, you allow them to make that decision. It's like, where do you walk what would be the right word, I suppose? Where do you keep like the moral grounds on advising people how to live without telling them what to do?
Was interesting. It's so rooted.
I got that out quite well.
It's so rooted in what I'd gone through with 12-step, because you can't make somebody do something.
Yeah,
you have to coax it out of them. Yeah, you have to bring out of them what's inside, and you have to help them see what's inside of them already that they don't recognize. And when I was going through the process of whether I should do this or not, I would constantly look at people that I felt were like, how to make $1 million, that this is how I can coach you to success, and all of these things but they filled me with fear.
Yes.
And I was like, I can't do this job. I can't do this. And it was only as I worked and read and then my addict brain kicked in, and I became obsessed. And then I learned in the space, I have learned in the space of a couple of years what it might take somebody quite a long time to do, because once I get into something, that's it. I'm like all in.
I think it's funny how you say then my addict brain kicked in and I became obsessed, but your whole visual cues are one of positivity. So it's like saying, as long as you get addicted to the right thing, do you know what I mean? A positive thing, then the addictive brain is not a bad thing because it helps you. Because let's face it, when you get addicted to something, you're all in. Yeah. No, so it's very interesting.
Yeah, it is. But also at the same time, I kind of play around with dynamics a little bit and rules. You know, it's funny you should say that. My sponsor in AA, I used to go out and exercise and run constantly, fanatically. I've done for 12 years straight. Like I'm not normal. Like my fitness levels and my amount of fitness I do is quite obsessive.
Addiction.
But my sponsor, you shouldn't be doing that. You're just replacing something with something else. And I used to say to him, I'd rather replace it with that. I've yet to read a statistic that tells me that apparently running myself into the ground, like maybe I'll drop dead of a heart attack, but it's very rare. It tends to work the other way around.
Yeah, 100%.
So I'll stick
100%.
with it, thanks. And likewise, when you ask me about coaching, and so to be a good coach, you need to work with your coachee and let them work out what they are. And my training very much talks about that, and deals with that. But I don't necessarily come at it from that angle, because I do think in the modern era, in the modern day, people want you to help them. Yeah, and and they want the guidance. And what I find incredibly fulfilling is that I will work with individuals who come to me and they will want to know what to do next. And instead of sitting back and not answering those questions, I will be like, right, come on, we're going to do this. Yeah. I'm very driven by, once I can find out where they're at and what they're doing and what's inside them, then I can help pull out of that what they need to do next. And I'll be very prescriptive about, what you need to do to succeed. And like, come on, let's go. We need to get this done. We need to do that.
I once had a session with a coach. I don't know if you call him a coach, but when I was feeling pretty down about my career, I went to see a particular individual. It was really good, actually. But in the first sort of 15 minutes, he said that the biggest mistake the human race make is that we're all the same. We think we're all different, but we're all the same. They said something like there's 6 personalities. From your perspective, is that, do you think that's true? Or do you find with the people you coach, everyone's different, the process is different? How would you quantify that to that question?
I would agree with that. It's very similar. The things the traits that you find, people are stuck. People are always stuck. And from being stuck comes feeling down and feeling low. And then from feeling low, being stuck and being down comes a lack of movement, and becomes a cycle of being trapped in a box and in your own head and in your own world. And everybody can exist in that in various forms of extreme or normality, and we all kind of white knuckles through that. And what you've got to do is you've got to break people out of that. So yes, people tend to be in the same areas and they don't know how to break out of them. And the patterns that you use to help people recognize that and do that are usually very similar, although the methods and how you bring that out of the person, I believe, is very individual. And it becomes very one-on-one, and it becomes incredibly rewarding and emotional. I find it quite an emotional process. It's like,
Has it been non-stop success, or have you had candidates that have failed and left you, if that makes sense?
No, total. Like, it's been like the learning curve has been huge, and moving to Dubai has just been like next level. There's a real that people are really unhappy in the world out there at the minute. The world is a really strange, unsettled place, and people they want assurance, and they want stability, and they're looking for help. I think what we don't recognise as a society at the minute is the importance of coaching. My wife says, and has said for many years, everybody should have a coach. And it's funny, you said you've had a period of time, and I meet lots of people who say, yeah, I tried this once, and it was kind of all right. But I always talk about whatever we do it's about the work. Yeah, I call it the work. We have to put work in. We have to put work in on ourselves. And I naturally seemed to work that out really quickly in myself 12 years ago. That if I was to get myself out of this mess, I didn't want to stay. I didn't want to sit in a church hall for the rest of my life in a circle. And that was the only thing I was going to do. I wanted to do other stuff. So I learned that if I ran and if I lifted weights or if I went to CrossFit, if I did all these other things, they were equally as good for me. Another arm of what I needed to do. And so I just ran with that and carried on going with it. And I think that's what made my life rich and brought me to this point. And that's the basis of how I run my coaching, in that I think you need to create these points of action and be, and movement. And that's how you bring about change.
Well, as cliche as it might sound, I can safely say that one session in the gym, proper session, not sometimes you have a silly session, do you know what I mean? But when you have a proper session, I can safely say I've always felt more rewarded than anything else I've ever done in my past recreationally. You know? I wanted to ask, you said we're all very unhappy. What makes you think that?
Well,
I mean, you're right.
Statistics really and facts. I mean, depression rates are at the highest they've ever been. Social media and everything that brings about. I write quite a lot of different articles that are based on my training and interacting with people. 20-year-old daughter, if you look at the anxiety rates in young women at the minute are through the roof because of social media. Young boys are kind of lost and they don't really have a purpose. They don't have role models to look up to. That we're trapped in a world where they think people like Andrew Tate and the manosphere and all these kind of things are the things to look toward. And they're kind of false idols. So it's left them in a little bit of they're in a state where they don't know what to do. And quite frankly, a lot of the time the parents are at a position where they're kind of lost and they're down. Is the world at war or not at war? Crazy things are going on here. Like everything's, it's so unstable. It's really, really tricky times to try and deal with. And I just think people need somebody to talk to. They need a place of reassurance and people to interact with. And I just wish that people could be. I'm trying to bang the drum of the fact that having a coach isn't a luxury in life.
It's a necessity.
It's kind of a necessity. Since COVID, I read a statistic that said that the depression rates since COVID are so high because we all went through that period. And they say that apparently once you go through that mass depression, you can't get back out of that. Your rates will always be set at that level. So because the world went through that, we're all down. And now we've all got to get ourselves out of that.
God, you know what? Yeah, that's, because I was made redundant during COVID, which was, for people that know me, and the way I used to view my job and maybe my ego and stuff like that, it was a real kick in the teeth.
Yeah.
And I don't think I ever recovered.
Yeah.
I don't think I ever rediscovered my passion for the industry, for people, I don't know, I was, what am I now? 48. So what was that? 43, 44, something like this. And I remember being, and it's not about overdoing it. I was really crushed not because of the situation, because I got made redundant. It was an ego thing. Do you know what I mean? But I don't know. I don't know if I ever really recovered. I think what you're saying is very, very true there, that happened and the world has never recentered again.
It's not, and I think that you'll see people who've retained jobs and positions, they're equally as unhappy and in a position where they don't know, they question their roles and what they're doing. Companies have been making people redundant left, right and centre over the last 12, 18 months, 2-year period. People don't know if their jobs are stable or not. society's having another dip again at the minute. So there's that constant questioning. I started a men's group since I came out here to Dubai. Like, I've only been out here a year, and I've started this men's group recently, which is totally led by me. It's community led, because I just felt I needed to help more guys. Like, I'm meeting and having conversations with people that maybe can't afford coaching and, you know, one-to-one coaching sessions, but I meet people and talk to them and see how they need connection and they're down. And I was just trying to think of ways that, what can I do? Like, I can't, it's such a funny situation when you go away from meeting somebody and talking about their life. I tend to carry that with me for a little bit of time. And
tell me about it. I've done 60 podcasts,
and people can really kind of like connect with me. And I just think, I just want to help you. I know what you need to do. You know, back to your question, is it the same thing? And it's kind of like, yes. Yeah. Like, you need to like book yourself up. You need to give your head a shake. You need to get off that chair and out of the room. You need to meet me for a run, and we need to go out. And I've started this men's group, and we meet on the beach near my apartment where I live on a Friday morning at 5:30, and we go and sit on the beach. And it's only been going for a few weeks, but and I started with 3 people, and I now have 9 people.
Okay.
And this weekend it's looking more like 12, 15 people, and it's growing. It's a bit like.
And what's the sort of demographic of the guys? Anyone and everyone?
Yeah, predominantly kind of like midlife guys, although I have a couple of younger guys that are now starting to come as well. But predominantly like midlife guys, like, you know, we're people who are going through the, you know, I feel I carry a lot of responsibility, and I'm, you know, I don't know how I can share the burden. So what happens is, when you come together, you tend to find that guys will share the burden with each other, and in sharing that burden with each other,
and this is something that I think has been excellent over the last 10 years, how guys are more open to talk about. I mean, back, you know, let's say in our day, you know, it just wasn't the done thing. You just got on with it. Yeah. And I know that there are, you know, like maybe the late Gen X's and the boomers still have a little bit of that, you know, oh, shut up and get back down the coal mine like your granddad, you know, this sort of thing. But I've noticed through my friends, and I don't have many, I have a very, very small friends group, and I've noticed through them that we've all been through certain things in our lives quite seismic in the last maybe 6-7 years, and a lot easier just to say it. Do you know what I mean? Where these are also the same guys you have incredible banter with, you know, and I've known them 25, 30 years, but there's a lot easier now for us to just say, yeah, you know, like that, I was really upset at that point, and yeah, it was really difficult for me to deal with that moment, and I think that that's a really important thing that's happened with guys, you know, that we are more, I'm sitting on a podcast with you that hopefully goes out to thousands of people saying exactly that I think it's a really good thing. Maybe 20 years ago I wouldn't say this. We'd be having a podcast where we're going, oh, you know, what'd you do today? You know, this
it's true, but I also think that I still think that men struggle to make the connections independently themselves. I think what you find is, I speak to a lot of guys, a lot of members in my group, who will say that they have friends, but when they go and meet with those friends, which is rare, you know, some of the younger guys who have younger families, you know, maybe they don't get the opportunity to get out that much, you know. This is another thing I see. I see a lot of guys who are kind of, oh, I can't because I've got kids and all of this kind of stuff. And, you know, I do a lot of work with them where it's like, okay, I have this analogy that I say, which is when you get on a plane and they do the safety film and they tell you when the mask drops and you've got to put the mask on you, and then you put the mask on your children who are next to you. And this is the thing I try and teach to the guys in particular. It's like, you have to spend time on yourself.
That's a very good analogy.
You have to get yourself focused and centered. And I think we're too willing to give. Yeah, and feel like you know, I have to be here to do this. You know, this is why I do it at 5:30 in the morning, because my line to all these guys is, you can be on a beach at 5:30 in the morning. It's not going to interfere with anything in your day. It's not going to interfere with your kids. You'll be back for drop off. You could do all these things. And by 6:30 a.m., you've basically spent some time, got some stuff off your chest, shared with some other guys. And back to my point, I think when you have a circle of friends that you know maybe sometimes you're not willing to talk about some of the deeper things that are bothering you in life, because you don't want to bring that up in that group, because you don't want to be seen to be weak or any of that.
Yeah, I think it could also be judgment. It's easier to tell a stranger.
Absolutely. So I take the
secret,
I take the dynamic of the 12-step circle, which I've found really powerful, where you sit with a load of people that you don't know, depending on where you are, and you just basically can say whatever you like. And we take that dynamic and we bring it to the beach, and we bring it to those early mornings and those meets that we do. And it's incredible how much everybody's got to say and how willing people are to support each other, and, you know, get stuff out there, and how much better it makes people feel.
What do you think should, you know, the common traits amongst men, you know, that men think they are, or they're being told they are, or something like that. What do you think is the one sort of comment that needs to be dissolved, you know?
Well, there's every question I see is about what does a man stand for? What is masculinity? And my pet hate is the whole term around toxic masculinity, and what that was. Has really knocked men and knocked men's confidence of all levels, really. So, you know, the idea that you want to be male and lift things and throw things and be alpha, was the like, we need to get that back and own it. And I run with that. I am an alpha individual. It comes from a scientific term. You know, it's really that simple. That is what we're like. And that doesn't mean that we're going to like go around like, you know, pillaging and all of this. Kind of
we're not
stuff.
in attack mode. You know what I mean?
And I think we very easily, I think the male demographic very easily became the target of extreme left kind of press and, you know, voice that became with individuals that basically came out and created awful situations for us, but we all got branded and like bagged in the same kind of area.
100%. That there definitely was a feeling of like, okay, you, man, have done something very, very bad. You know, let's just say it, Harvey Weinstein, the Me Too movement.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just like, say it, you know what I mean? It's like, and then suddenly we're all that way. Do you know? And then it all went flying over to a section where, no, that's it. You all are, that's it. And then what came through that, I think that was difficult, was how the narrative got spun, which was, yes, that's really bad. You know, you don't have to be, you know, it doesn't take a genius to realize that what these people were doing is really bad. You know, in any walk of life, of course it is. But then it got, I think, certainly spun, you know, into a world where don't play fight as kids, don't rough each other up. Anything to do with being manly is now very, very bad. And like you said, has become toxic, where that's a very dangerous word.
It's a horrible word.
And it, again, has elements of merit, you know. And as you were saying, the leftist agenda and the woke agenda has elements of merit about giving suppressed people a voice. And I'm not having to preach. It's like, I am saying, I do think that everyone has the right to say and be whoever they are. I just don't think you got to force it on people, you know. But I think what it did to men maybe in the last 5 years, like again, like you said, is it made us start to question our essence. You know, and go like, am I bad? Is that bad? When I was working like 20 years ago and I had a laugh with my mate about, am I that, you know what I mean? And then another thing I just wanted to say, because, oh wow, the time has flown, you know. So, but one thing I did want to say that coincides with this. As when you said about how you started watching YouTube videos and that they started to scare you. And it's about, as I said outside, about the shouting about motivation and you can do this and all you need is discipline. And I wanted to ask, how do you think there's a correlation between, on the one side, what I've just said about, you know, everything we're doing is bad, and on the other side, to get out of it, all you have to do is be super hardcore alpha. Have we got lost? And have men done this to themselves? Have we just lost ourselves?
No. I don't believe men have done it to themselves. I believe what's happened is that the narrative has been so pointed at men. And we were just talking outside about how we're simple beings.
Yes, I couldn't agree more.
So
Super simple.
we generally really don't want to go out and try and find and pick an argument, particularly not if we've got kids and family and all of this kind of stuff. So what men have done is withdraw and give up and stop. Yeah, and I mean that on all sorts of levels. Like, why should I go and coach a kids' football team if there's a chance that I could be told that I'm a bad person? You know, I could get into this Me Too category. So you see huge amounts of guys unwilling to give up their free time. So then kids and young men don't get these hero figures to work to. And likewise, guys managing managerial positions in companies, you'll find that management positions, like the statistics around guys managing young women and women, like, the confidence ebbs away, we withdraw, like, don't want to put ourselves in that whack-a-mole position where all of a sudden we're being whacked on the head because we said the wrong thing and in the wrong way. And I was guilty of that as well. I remember thinking, oh, I'm not getting involved in that conversation. We withdraw and we pull ourselves back. And now the narrative is shifting a little bit and it's changing, but we're all back. Yeah. And we're all in this like kind of quiet space and we're all lost. Yeah.
And some of the people driving this shift in the narrative are women. Correct. You mentioned a couple of authors and people that you have.
There's massive support coming through from big female authors and feminist leads who are recognizing this at the minute. And now that we basically need to bolster men and we need to like reinstill some of the confidence, and that we need to start working together more because this is why population rates have dropped. People aren't having sex in the same numbers anymore. Young people aren't, like, statistics are coming back. All these crazy statistics are coming back with all of this stuff where like procreation's not happening.
Some of these stats are mad. Do you know what I mean?
Like,
some of these stats are about how men are not wanting to engage in these things anymore due to, where it can end up leading. So I'm seeing a really positive shift in the whole approach, really, but that's fine and that's good. But there's a huge group of guys out there who are kind of like stuck in this area now, and they don't know what to do, or maybe they've gone through divorces and they're on their own in apartments. And this is what you see in Dubai a lot. I think you see a lot of guys in Dubai who are maybe disconnected. Friends move around. It's very transient. People move on. It's difficult to make meaningful connections. So, this is the other thing that I find when I run these groups and we get together, like everybody's like happy to see each other. It's a great opportunity just to connect and be together, really. And that's because that's hard to come by. So look, this has been fascinating. And I did actually think going into this that we'd probably need more than an hour, and we probably do. But we are coming to a close. I wanted to ask, you're now happily married.
Yeah.
How is the dynamic between you and your wife now? Because again, we've spoken about, the female side of things, the male side of things, the last 10 years, which is hugely polarizing, where even some of the things we've said, I'm a little bit like, I don't know, is that going to get, shot down, But it's all honesty. I wanted to ask, how is your dynamic at home, and how do you work together with your wife to ensure that you're both feeling fulfilled and you're both achieving your inner goals?
We're pretty progressive with the way we handle stuff. I'm really lucky in that my partner is a very progressive female thinker. She's a business lead. She's a CEO, so she's very senior, but she doesn't bang that feminist side, that feminist drum. She's kind of quite blokish. We joke about this quite a lot in the approach. And also, it was a second relationship. So when we got together, which was part way through my, sobriety change, and there were very distinct rules that I came with. And it was like, for me to work, there are things I need to do. And at that point, our youngest between us, her youngest, was one at that point. So we had a baby in the mix. And I became parent to my youngest son, Gabe, who sees me as his dad. But I was like, I know we've got a young one, but like, I need to get up in the morning, run, work out, come back, then you've got me, and then I'm on board, and then we can do whatever. And then I'll go out again in the evening and go and do a run. And this keeps me sane, and this keeps things on balance. And we had that agreement from day one, and it's always stayed like that. And I just think once you set those boundaries and you have that connection and you work together, that's where the magic kind of happens, really.
Fantastic. So finally, to close out, I always say, if there's one thing you'd like to say to any young man out there, any young woman out there, anybody that's lost the joy in their life, and would like to take steps to rediscover it, what would be the one thing you would say to them to start?
Yeah, to sit and really think about the last time you felt joy. And if you feel numb to it and you don't want to get up in the morning and like hit your day with energy, then you need to ask for help. Yeah, and you need to recognize the fact that you can't do it on your own. And it's the start of a journey, and there is going to be work involved in it, but that work is incredibly rewarding.
Fantastic. Chris, thank you so much for coming on. I
you.
have really enjoyed it. Again, I'm very grateful for your candor, how honest you've been. I think that the world would be a much better place if people just spoke their mind, you know.
Yeah.
I wish you all the best.
Thanks, Samuel. Yeah, really nice chatting to you. Yeah, really cool. Thank you.
Fantastic.